On my tombstone, it's gonna say, I deserve to be here because I signed Big Sean.
Kendrick or J. Cole?
I love both them. But
Oh shit, you got an explanation.
I've been to Cole's house though. Kendrick been to my house before.
So you're making this personal.
It's 185 million records sold under good music. I love good music. They made more money off my music than I did. The first thing I've ever done was sign Big Sean.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Wait.
The worst.
He just said the worst.
The worst. This is the best.
What if they owed you $5 million? What if they owed you that, bro?
Right.
And you showed up for them and you did all these things, right? And they up billions. I feel like I'm the only one who stayed that long for good music, so yeah, it affected me personally, bro.
Big Sean is one of the most likable, most hated rappers in the game, and if that doesn't make sense, it's because nothing about this situation makes sense. The other day, Big Sean premiered a freestyle and a snippet on Instagram, and many fans thought he was taking shots at either Kendrick Lamar or Kanye West within these records. Now, of course, we're going to break down all the bars and why he could be possibly throwing subliminal disses at either Kendrick or Kanye. But it's important to remember that these are very indirect, subliminal disses, if they are even disses at that. So we have to kind of take a step back and understand his relationship with both Kanye and Kendrick to really understand if these were genuine shots or if he was just kind of targeting any one of his haters vaguely.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to, guys like this, Rapaholics and everybody else, because I think they directly get it.
But regardless if they were shots or not, this didn't seem to matter to Kanye West or his fans because they were so upset at Big Sean even potentially having the thought of dissing Kanye that they decided to go online and leak his entire upcoming album. And the fan who leaked it claims that Kanye told them to leak it. And now Big Sean is dropping more snippets on Twitter and releasing his music early because any plans of him releasing his actual album got hijacked and ruined by these Kanye fans as they put it out online for the entire world to hear. Now, people's first assumption was that he was dissing Kendrick Lamar. When these snippets first came out, people automatically assumed that he was trying to insert himself back into a beef with Kendrick, and it's pretty simple why they thought that. Big Sean and Kendrick have had a long-standing beef, and given the shots that Kendrick has sent Big Sean's way, if I was Sean, I wouldn't really like him much either. See, the two rappers came up around the same time in the early 2010s, with Big Sean actually starting his career and having success a little bit earlier than Kendrick did. But that would quickly change when Kendrick Lamar dropped his classic album Good Kid, Mad City, and completely lapped Sean, becoming one of the biggest freshmen in the game at the time. And one of the roots of their disdain towards each other is the fact that they were both fighting for that top position within hip-hop. And this would become a common theme within this story and within Big Sean's career in general, as the main reason why he never reached the same level of success as a Kendrick Lamar is because while Kendrick was releasing projects like Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly, Big Sean never released a classic project of his own. But he did drop an arguably classic mixtape in 2012 with Detroit, and Kendrick Lamar actually made a feature appearance on the record. So it's safe to say at that point in their careers, the two were on fairly good terms, and by 2013, Sean was gearing up to drop his second album, Hall of Fame. Now, a couple days before he released the album, he put out some tweets that said, "This one didn't make the album because of the sample, but it is not no radio stuff. Straight rap. I'm talking 7 minutes straight. Grimy stuff. And it might have Kendrick and Electronica on it too. 3 different type vibes on it." Then he tagged Kendrick Lamar and said, "Kendrick is so mad on that song. Haha, sheesh." But he wouldn't be laughing for too long, as the next day the song drops and it literally destroys the entire rap game, as Kendrick Lamar name drops nearly everyone who was big at the time, claiming that he's better than them and that he's trying to steal their fan bases. Now, if you guys never heard this song, Kendrick rapped, "I'm usually homeboys with the same rappers I'm rhyming with, but this is hip-hop and those rappers should know what time it is." And that goes for Jermaine Cole, Big Crit, Wale, Pusha T, Meek Mills, A$AP Rocky, Drake, Big Sean, Electronica, Tyler, Mac Miller. "I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you people. Trying to make sure your core fans never heard of you people. They don't want to hear not one more noun or verb from you people." Now, drop a like if you think I'm a better rapper than Kendrick, but let's get back to it. Basically, this song got a response from the entire rap game, but no one was paying attention to Big Sean's verse. It was all about the controversy that Kendrick stirred up by confidently name-dropping basically the entire rap game, including Big Sean, whose song it was, and claimed that he wanted to murder them all. And this had every rapper shook. I mean, Mac Miller was tweeting out that if he can't rap any more nouns or verbs, then he'd come up with the craziest adjectives you ever heard. It also garnered response tracks from Papoose, Big Crit, Lupe Fiasco, Meek Mill. J. Cole was tweeting about it. Pusha T was tweeting about it. Even Drake responded to the record. It changed the entire game, and the song completely overshadowed Big Sean's album release and really everything else in rap at the time. And by the time Big Sean dropped that album, it only sold 72,000 copies in its first week, which was considerably less than he sold with his album before that, and way less than his peers like J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Wiz Khalifa, Meek Mill, and Wale were selling at that time, as they were all selling over 150,000 copies first week with the albums they released in that era. So not only did that record put Big Sean in the bullseye by Kendrick, but it also put him in a much weaker position commercially than his peers at the time. The song was so big it even overshadowed Drake's massive Nothing Was the Same album release, as he was forced to be questioned about that Control verse in multiple interviews, and he wasn't too happy about it.
That verse was a moment to talk about. Are you listening to it now at this point in time? It was real cool for like, you know, a couple weeks. But like, if I asked you, for example, like, how does that verse start?
Big Sean had a positive attitude on the song, and he said in interviews that he believed he held his own when he stood toe-to-toe with Kendrick and Jay Electronica on that record. But his whole Hall of Fame album rollout was consumed with questions about the Control record. And in an interview with Vibe, they asked him if he heard Kendrick's verse before he released the song. And he said, of course he did. I had my verse on there first. I sent it to Kendrick, JLect too, and then Kendrick sent that verse back. So when I heard it, I was just kind of like cracking up. I was like, all right, that's what it needed to get back to. It needed to get back to hip-hop, that culture. He continued to say, Kendrick is my homie. We're all homies, but it's all sport. When I heard his verse, I wasn't about to go back and change my verse. That's cheating. I could go back and name drop. I could cut his verse out, but that's not the way of an OG. That's not how G's move. If 3 people hop on a song, someone's gonna have a standout verse, always. Whether it's All Me, whether it's Click, whether it's Control. Now, sneaking All Me and Click in there is a slick move because Big Sean arguably did have the best performance on both those records. But even just weeks after Control dropped, Big Sean already had to start defending his performance on that track. And questions about that record would continue to haunt him for arguably the rest of his career. And in early 2015, he was asked about the record again, and he sang a bit of a different tune. If you guys don't remember, Big Sean's reasoning for not putting it on the album, he claims, was because of sample issues. But when he was asked why it didn't make the album again in 2015, he said, looking back on it, it was a different vibe than my album. There's a lot of negativity on that song, and I don't like negative stuff. People love drama, people love BS. I knew when Kendrick did that name dropping that it was just gonna set it off. I could see why people gravitated towards that verse for that reason. I respected him for thinking of that. I never want to shade anybody. It wouldn't have been good if I cut that out of his verse or if I didn't put the song out. So this sounds like a little bit of a different reason than just sample issues, and a couple months later, Big Sean dropped a freestyle to Beyonce's song Me, Myself, and I, where he raps, y'all bragging about so-and-so, like, oh, he's really it? The new rapper in rap? Well, can he really spit? Or does he just hide behind his skits like half these rappers do, and then y'all go and praise him like he's the savior of hip-hop? Now, this would be the first in a long line of subliminals that Sean sends Kendrick's way, and when he was questioned about that release, he said that that verse wasn't aimed at Kendrick, it was just aimed at the quote-unquote people. He said, it wasn't even a diss to no rappers, it was a diss to the people. I feel like people get a little fuzzy-minded and brainwashed when it comes to like drama or he said this, and they focus on that one little part or the skits, and that ain't it to me. So you'll see later on in the story that Big Sean has a bad habit of dropping a sneak diss and then kind of walking it back just moments later. But even with this response, you could kind of feel his resentment towards Kendrick doing the name drops or the skits on his albums and how people look at that as the reason why Kendrick is one of the greatest rappers in the game. Again, if you guys don't remember, at this point in Kendrick's career, he's gearing up to drop his second classic album, while Big Sean arguably doesn't have any classic albums, and one of the biggest moments of his career was that Control record, which got completely overshadowed by Kendrick. So you can understand where that jealousy, or at the very least that competitive nature, stemmed from, but the two still seem to be on decent terms as they performed together at the end of 2015. And by the year 2016, DJ Khaled got the two together on the song Holy Key. So again, seemed like they were on good terms, but on that record, Big Sean rapped in the same flow that Kendrick used on Control, and he rapped the bars, "Whoa, I hear a little bit of me in all your favorite rappers. You know it's true. I need my respect due." Basically claiming that some of the biggest rappers in the game were biting his flow. And remember these bars because they'll play an important role within the bars that Sean rapped on his recent release, which people thought he was taking shots at Kendrick on. But in the meantime, we're still in 2016, and on October 31st, 2016, Big Sean drops his record No More Interviews. On that record, he dropped some more subliminal bars for Kendrick when he rapped, "And I can't lie like I like this rap stuff like I usually do, and I'm not impressed by you rappers rapping fast who sound like one big asthma attack but trash when I'm rapping it back, who you put in your top 5 and claim they're the savior of rap." Now, I'm sorry, but who else could Sean be talking about here besides Kendrick, right? Like, if you're talking top 5 at the time, that title could have went to guys like J. Cole, Drake, A$AP Rocky, maybe Mac Miller, but none of these guys were typically rapping fast except for Kendrick, and none of them were really regarded as the savior of rap as much as Kendrick was. And when discussing Kendrick or that control verse in general, going forward, Big Sean's comments just got more and more negative, or at least defensive. In 2017, he went to the Breakfast Club to promote his upcoming release, I Decided, and Charlemagne told Big Sean that Kendrick washed him on Control, and Big Sean said, no he didn't, stop it. And how long ago was that? What year was that? And I still don't feel like I got washed anyways. He continued by saying, that's your opinion. See, that's what I'm saying. You can't mess with some people's opinions. You know why? Because that's going to throw you off. You got to focus on what's at hand, what you feel in your heart. So again, instead of just acknowledging the massive moment that Kendrick verse was for hip hop, Big Sean had to just defend himself and reiterate that he can't listen to other people's opinions on who rapped better or who was the better rapper in general. And Kendrick seemed to caught wind of this defensiveness and all the sneak disses from Big Sean. And in April of 2017, just 1 month after Big Sean releases his album, Kendrick puts up a picture of the Roman numerals 4 on his Instagram, and from there it was just up. That picture would be teasing the release of Kendrick's song called The Heart Part 4, which was riddled with sneak disses at Big Sean. On the first bars of the record, Kendrick rapped, 30 millions later, my future favors the legendary status of a hip-hop rhyme savior, directly referring himself to the savior of hip-hop, which in Sean's records, Me, Myself, and I, and No More Interviews, he was questioning why everybody thought that Kendrick was the savior of hip-hop. On the second verse of the record, Kendrick proceeded to rap, my fans can't wait for me to sun you punk and crush all your little stuff. I'll big pun you punk, you're a scared little B-word. Now this was definitely in relation to Big Sean because at the time, again, Big Sean was taking multiple subliminal disses at Kendrick, and his fans were likely riling him up, waiting for him to respond to all the disrespect that Big Sean was throwing his way. Him saying you're a scared little B-word is also in relation to Big Sean because one of Sean's most well-known ad-libs was Lil B-word. He'd always rap the ad-lib Lil B-word, and Kendrick is flipping that here by saying that Sean is scared because every time that Sean would drop a subliminal, he would walk that subliminal back in interviews saying that it wasn't related to Kendrick. He'd continue to reference all those walkbacks that Sean did by rapping, tiptoeing around my name, you're lame, and when I get at you, homie, don't you tell me you was just playing. Then he raps from Sean's perspective by saying, oh, I was just playing, K-Dog, come on, you know I rock with you, bro. Kendrick interrupts him by saying, shut the F up. You sound like the last person I know. Might end up like the last person I know. Oh, you don't want to clash? I know. And when he says you sound like that last person I know, he could be referring to Jay Electronica in that bar because Jay had previously dissed Kendrick in a video calling him lame and saying that Kendrick is his son.
Kendrick is my son. Kendrick is my baby. Kendrick wishes that he could be me.
He also said he didn't like any of Kendrick's music besides the song Cartoons and Cereal, but after Ab Soul, one of Kendrick's label mates, had dissed Jay Electronica, he ended up backpedaling all of these disses and posted a video saying that he would collaborate with Kendrick, showing that he didn't want any confrontation. So when Kendrick raps, you don't want to clash, I know, he could be referencing how Sean or Jay Electronica, both the former collaborators on that record Control, keep walking back any negative comments that they make about Kendrick. Kendrick then proceeds to rap, I put my foot on the gas, head on the floor, hopping out before the vehicle crash, I'm on a roll. Here he's implying that on his next album, which would be Damn, that's where Kendrick would put his foot down on the gas and go all out on Big Sean and hop out before the vehicle crashed. Meaning that if they did go toe-to-toe, Kendrick would come out unscathed. And Kendrick really did almost crash out on that album, which we will touch on very shortly, but on the Heart Part 4, Kendrick continues to rap, yelling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm the greatest rapper alive, so damn great, I've died, what you're hearing now is a paranormal vibe. Now, this could be a shot at both Drake and Big Sean, because on No More Interviews, Big Sean rapped, and I'm just not impressed by you rappers rapping fast, who you put in your top 5 and claiming they're the savior of rap. So Big Sean clearly stating here that he's not impressed with who everyone thinks is the savior of rap and who's in that top 5. A year before the Heart Part 4, Drake also rapped on his track Grammys saying that he's top 5, no debating, and then, just weeks before the Heart Part 4 was released, he had a song called Galchester on his album More Life, when he said, no, I said top 5, but I'm really top 2, and I'm not 2. And just a couple days after More Life was released, Kendrick Lamar tweeted out Mr. 1 to 5, basically implying that Drake, Big Sean, whoever's questioning who is top 5 or claiming they are top 5, they could put that to rest because Kendrick is clearly the best rapper in the game at that period of time. Now, the funniest part of the Heart Part 4 record is that many people believed it had the same sample as the song Control did. And if you guys don't remember, Big Sean claimed that the reason the song Control was not on his album was because they could not clear the sample. However, Kendrick Lamar had no problem clearing the Heart Part 4 and putting it on streaming platforms even if it had the same sample that Control did, proving that Big Sean probably had an ulterior motive for not putting that Control record on his album. Now, unfortunately, when Kendrick released Damn, we didn't get that crash out that he kind of promised us on the Heart Part 4, but we did get his hit song Humble, where on the hook he rapped, be humble, Lil B-word. Again, referencing that ad-lib that Big Sean was famous for, basically telling him to be humble and sit down. However, there was a massive diss that was meant for that album, which we will touch on very shortly, but in the meantime, we got one more subliminal diss from Sean on his record with Metro Boomin called Big Business, where he said, "Nobody's sunning me. If I'm a son, I'm the one you look up to. F you." Again, very likely in reference to when Kendrick rapped, "My fans can't wait for me to sun you punk and crush all your little stuff." Now at this point, we're in the year 2020. Both Kendrick and Big Sean have taken breaks from hip-hop since 2017 and haven't released albums since then. But Big Sean was gearing up to drop his album Detroit 2, and on that record he had a song with Nipsey Hussle where he references his beef with Kendrick. On there he rapped, "After what happened to Nipsey, I reached out to Kendrick. It wasn't even no real issues there to begin with. Lack of communication and wrong information from people fueled by the ego is like mixing flames with diesel." He gave some backstory to this, saying that he was on a plane on his way to a J. Cole concert, and Punch from TDE, which is the record label that Kendrick is signed to, was also on the plane, and Punch told him that he should reach out to Kendrick and patch things up. So it seemed like the two were good after that, and both of them were relatively quiet again in music, and we didn't hear any of them touch on this beef. However, in 2023, 10 years after the Control record dropped, the original version to Kendrick Lamar's song Element, which was on his 2017 album Damn, had leaked on the internet. And on that leaked version, Kendrick rapped the bars, "F subliminals, I put you on that roll call. French Montana speaking on me in interviews, very cynical, dry hating, something I don't approve. J Electronica put silences on my Grammy night, another dead prophet hoping that God will give him life. Big Sean keeps sneak dissing, I'll let it slide. I think his false confidence got him inspired. I can't make them respect you, baby, it's not my job. You're finally famous for who you date, not how you rhyme. Cute raps, get your puberty up, then make you a classic album before you come at us. Drake, your Meek Mill beef might have you gassed up, but I'm a whole other beast, I'll really F you up." So while again, people thought that he might have issues with Drake or J Electronica, and he referenced both those rappers on this record, it was really Big Sean who he was going at the hardest, emphasizing that Big Sean lacks maturity in his rhymes, that he doesn't have a classic album, that he's not real competition to Kendrick, and that he's more famous for the people that he dates rather than the music that he makes. Now, when this leaked record got released, everyone thought it was AI. However, it was quickly taken down from the internet due to copyright claims from Kendrick's label. Now, if this really was AI or it was a fake record, then Kendrick's label would have no right to take it down due to a copyright violation. So it seems like this diss really was real, and this was meant to be that crash out that Kendrick was referencing on the Hard Part 4. But again, we're now in the year 2023, and Big Sean has yet to release a classic album. He's also not very active within the game at this period of time, and for those reasons, his name is far removed from that big three conversation within hip-hop. That's further emphasized when, in October of 2023, Drake and J. Cole linked up for the song First Person Shooter, where they referenced the big three, saying that it was them and Kendrick. So a couple months later, in March of 2024, Big Sean decided to touch on his place within hip-hop and reflect on it in a snippet of a track that he premiered on Instagram, where he rapped the bars, "I think where I lack most as an artist is consistency. I just haven't had the energy to compete with enemies or y'all so-called bigger three." This was a big change in tune and energy from how Big Sean was rapping back in 2015, when he was constantly questioning who people put in their top 5 and disagreeing on who people thought was the savior of rap. At this point in time, it seems like he's accepted that he's not mentioned in those conversations, and he thinks it's due to his lack of consistency and unwillingness to go toe-to-toe with these bigger rappers. So when Kendrick told him to be humble and sit down, it seems like he took this quite literally, and he was just trying to focus on the music. That same night in March of 2024, he announced that he would be dropping his first single to his next album that night, and that single would get completely overshadowed by Kendrick Lamar, as he featured on Metro Boomin and Future's project We Don't Trust You on the song Like That, where he also gave his take on who the big three is, saying, "F the big three, it's just Big Me." So while Sean is questioning whether or not he's in that top 3 or why he wouldn't be in that top 3, Kendrick is confidently saying, "There's no big 3. I'm the only rapper who deserves the crown." And then his whole beef with Drake would ensue, and we wouldn't hear anything from Big Sean about it until he dropped a snippet on Instagram and a freestyle on the On The Radar show. And there's a couple bars on there that people thought he was taking aim at Kendrick with. So let's break it down. On the snippet, Sean rapped, "They want to know how I know I made it when I hear a little bit of me in all your favorites. I don't really give a F how all you take it. I laugh at the fact that they calling you the greatest." These bars again reference what Sean was saying in DJ Khaled's song Holy Key, where he was accusing some of the top rappers in the game of stealing his flow, and also saying that he doesn't really care who people consider is the greatest, which at this point in time, people obviously consider Kendrick Lamar to be, if not the top, then one of the top rappers within the game. On his On The Radar freestyle, Sean also rapped, "People looking for engagement like they got their knee bent. I got better things to do than find someone to beef with. More bars that people possibly thought were aimed at Kendrick because of the fact that he was very, very apparent in his thirst for that beef with Drake. No Diddy. Big Sean is basically saying he's got better things to do than seek attention and find someone to beef with. He continues to rap, "It's shooters that'll shoot you regardless if Metro trusts you." Another bar that could be aimed at Kendrick because Kendrick was again on that record with Metro Boomin and Future talking about F the Big Three, and Metro's producer tag is, "If young Metro don't trust you, I'm gonna shoot you." Now, here's where we get into conspiracy land, so bear with me, this could be a big reach. But these next few bars, to me, seem like the most obvious Kendrick disses. And this is where he raps, "I had train wrecks and kicked home wreckers out of my house." Now, again, this could absolutely be a reach, but when Big Sean did an interview with Drink Champs, which we will definitely touch on later because it plays a pivotal role in his beef with Kanye, but in that interview, he's asked who he thinks is better, J. Cole or Kendrick. Big Sean answered this by making it pretty personal and said he chooses J. Cole because he's actually been to J. Cole's house, but he's never been to Kendrick's, implying that he has a genuine friendship with J. Cole, but he also mentioned that Kendrick has actually been to his house before.
Kendrick or J. Cole?
I love both them. But
Oh shit, you got an explanation.
I've been to Cole's house though. Kendrick been to my house before.
So you're making this personal.
Now, throughout Drake's diss tracks and even through Kendrick's own music, there's been multiple references of Kendrick being a homewrecker. A homewrecker is someone who ruins a relationship by cheating. And again, Drake and Kendrick himself have made multiple references in their tracks about Kendrick cheating on his fiancée Whitney, which is the reason they could not be engaged currently. Big Sean on this track is rapping that he kicked homewreckers out of his house, and this very well could be in reference to Kendrick. Sean clearly stated that Kendrick has been to his house, but he's never been to Kendrick's. Drake went on record accusing Kendrick of being a homewrecker. And since that Control verse, Big Sean and Kendrick haven't been on the best of terms, so that kicking homewreckers out of your house bar could be a metaphor for the strained relationship that Big Sean and Kendrick have had, as Kendrick was once welcome in Sean's home and he no longer is. Now, let me know in the comments if you think I'm reaching with those homewrecker bars, because shortly after releasing these new tracks, Big Sean quickly came on to Twitter to emphasize that, again, he was not dissing Kendrick. And it's sad at this point because this would be the third time that Big Sean drops a record, and instead of just letting the music do the talking, he jumps online and has to defend himself against the bars that he spit and deny any allegations that they were aimed at Kendrick. It shows that Sean may not have the same confidence in himself or his position within hip-hop as someone like Kendrick does, as every time people try to contextualize his bars, he has to make sure it's known to the public that he wants no smoke with Kendrick. And it just takes away from the overall experience and enjoyability of the music, right? Like, if Kendrick came out and blatantly explained to the world who he was dissing on the Heart Part 4, there would be no mystique or excitement or substance to that record because we would fully understand what he's talking about. He's confident enough in himself to let the music do the talking, and if the narrative turns to the fact that he's dissing Big Sean, he's up for the challenge. He's ready to fight back against any diss that might be thrown at him in retaliation. But yeah, Big Sean, on the other hand, the same night that he drops these freestyles that everyone thinks he's dissing Kendrick on, just a couple hours later he jumps on Twitter and says, "You're all going with so many narratives. I'm talking to the haters who just keep finding something to point out they don't like about me. It's not even worth explaining though. I'm just gonna focus on the music." Basically emphasizing that he's not talking about Kendrick in his bars, he's just talking to his quote-unquote haters in general. Which is, again, something he's been using as a defense mechanism for the last almost 10 years whenever people ask him if he's dissing Kendrick Lamar. But who are these so-called quote-unquote haters? Kendrick is one of the only rappers or public figures to publicly come out and express their hatred towards Big Sean. But DJ Head, a close associate of Kendrick's, also came out to emphasize that Big Sean really was not dissing Kendrick on that record. He tweeted out, "I talked to Sean. When he rapped, I got better things to do than find someone to beef with. It was not directed at Kendrick. That bar was directed at a different Gemini." And if you dig a little deeper, you come to find out that the only other rapper who publicly hates on Big Sean and whose astrological sign would be a Gemini is Kanye West. And at this point in his career, it makes a lot more sense that Big Sean is dissing Kanye rather than Kendrick. So let's dive into their history and you'll get a clearer understanding. See, Big Sean was signed to Kanye in 2007, 2 years after rapping for him outside a Detroit radio station in 2005. There's footage of the two rappers together in the studio back in 2007 working on Kanye West's classic album Graduation. Sean would later be involved with all of Kanye's future albums like 808s and Heartbreak, Dark Fantasy. He was also on the biggest singles off of Kanye's Good Music label's album Cruel Summer. And he dropped 4 platinum albums of his own under the Good Music label as well. So for years, the two rappers seemed to be good, no pun intended, and Kanye ended up on 3 songs off of Big Sean's 2015 album Dark Sky Paradise. But that would be the last time that we heard a collaboration from the two rappers, and Big Sean actually ended up leaving Kanye's label in 2020 after dropping his album Detroit 2. Neither of them really commented on why Big Sean left the label, but it was kind of obvious. I mean, Kanye at the time was running for president, divorcing Kim Kardashian. He was kind of losing his mind, and a lot of the artists off his label either weren't releasing music or were in the process of leaving the label. Big Sean was actually one of the last artists off of Good Music and had definitely released the most albums and the most successful albums out of any artist that was ever on the label. But in 2022, Kanye West goes on Drink Champs for an interview, and in that interview, he's asked who he would choose between Big Sean and Pusha T. Kanye was so excited to answer this question, he jumped up out of his seat, ran to grab a tombstone decoration that was in the room, and he said, I've been waiting for this question, man. Signing Big Sean was the worst decision I ever made in my life. On my tombstone, it's gonna say, I deserve to be here because I signed Big Sean.
On my tombstone, it's gonna say, I deserve to be here because I signed Big Sean. The worst thing I've ever done was sign Big Sean.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Wait. The worst.
The worst. The worst song is the best.
I said, man, do not make your first song be called ass. I always want to make a song that if I'm going through the airport and people sing my song, it's my theme music. When you go through the airport, everybody screams out, ass. Give me my tombstone.
Now, I remember watching this interview live, and as funny as these comments were, like, it was just cruel, man. Like, Big Sean seems like such a likable guy, always loyal to Kanye West, always spoke highly of Kanye, and at this point in his career, like, he was pretty much on the back end of his career. He hadn't released an album in years. He was fairly inactive. Like, he was just staying out the way. So for Kanye to reflect on his collaborative relationship with Big Sean by saying it's the worst decision he ever made in his life to sign the guy, it was definitely out of pocket and pretty random, but Kanye claims that he made these remarks because of Big Sean's political views and how Big Sean didn't support Kanye when he ran for president back in 2020. Big Sean later on also goes on Drink Champs to explain his side of the story, really just emphasizing his loyalty to Kanye and everything that he's already done for Ye. He's talking about how he's been Kanye's ghostwriter, he's been at his beck and call, like every time Kanye's called him, Big Sean has hopped on a plane and went to wherever he is. He's talking about how he's dropped the most albums out of any of Kanye's artists on Kanye's label, and he's the only one to go platinum with multiple albums multiple times. He would write songs for Kanye and not even expect to get publishing or royalties back for those records that he wrote. It was all just to return the favor of Kanye putting him on initially. Big Sean also said that when his manager Jay Brown saw his record contract, he said it was the worst deal he's ever seen in music. So after that, Big Sean spent millions of his own dollars auditing his label because there was money missing, he wasn't getting paid what he was owed, thinking that the money had probably been paid to Universal Records, which was the parent company of Good Music, but really the profits of Sean's music had all been paid to Kanye's label, Good. So basically Sean's saying that before Kanye ever made these comments, he was already giving Sean a big slap in the face because Sean was always there for Kanye and made him richer by releasing all these hit albums and singles on Good Music, and Kanye in return becomes a billionaire and can't even pay Sean what he's owed. Sean also said he was extremely offended because after all this loyalty that he showed Kanye throughout the years, it's crazy that he would come out and publicly disrespect him, but then always praise a guy like Drake, who is someone who has publicly dissed Kanye multiple times. He then says the root of all his problems with Kanye stems back to the song that Big Sean had with Drake called Blessings. See, originally that song was just Big Sean and Drake, and the day that Sean was due to submit his album, he played the album for Kanye, and when Kanye heard Blessings, he said he had to be on that song no matter what. So Big Sean, being the loyal guy that he was, helped Kanye write his verse the night before his album was due. But because the album was due in such a short amount of time, Kanye's verse didn't end up making the album version of the song. And then when him and Drake were supposed to shoot the video, Kanye found out and spazzed out on Big Sean, thinking that he was purposely keeping him off of the record and off of the music video and picking sides with Drake, even though Big Sean wrote Kanye's verse for him. He said this also might have strained his relationship with Drake because Drake didn't understand why Big Sean was so adamant on having Kanye on that record since it was already a finished record.
What if they owed you $5 million? What if they owed you that, bro?
Right.
And you showed up for them and you did all these things, right? And they up billions. And the nigga who comes at them, who talks the most shit, he be bigging up in the interview, talking about Drake, who he loves. I feel like I'm the only one who stayed that long for Good Music, so yeah, it affected me personally, bro.
This was also the last time we saw Kanye and Big Sean collaborate, and Kanye purposely left Big Sean off of multiple songs over the years, like Father Stretch My Hands and Hurricane. He had verses on both those records, and when the album version of those songs released, Big Sean was just not on them. Now, ever since then, we haven't heard anything from the two until Sean drops one snippet and one freestyle in July of 2024, which again has many people confused on whether he was going at Kanye or Kendrick or both of them. Now let's break down why it's very likely Kanye West that he was going at. See, first he played a snippet of a track on Instagram, which was actually produced by Kanye, and as he starts playing it, he says, "When I linked with Ty Dolla $ign, he told me they were going to use this track for Vultures too, but I don't know." So I know we already went over a lot of these bars and understood how they could potentially be directed at Kendrick, but when you really break them down, given the history that Kanye and Big Sean have, dissecting these bars, you'll really see clearly how a lot of these bars are very likely aimed at Kanye. He starts off by rapping, "They want to know how I made it when I hear a little bit of me in all your favorites." Again, could have been a slight at Kendrick, but way more likely a slight at Kanye because Big Sean is on record stating that he's written multiple verses and records for Kanye specifically. So the part about hearing a little bit of me in all your favorites, well, obviously Kanye is regarded as one of the most prominent, influential figures within hip-hop, and if Big Sean was there with him, helping him write on some of his biggest and best albums, it would make sense that when he says, "They want to know how I know I made it when I hear a little bit of me in all your favorites," that he's obviously saying, "I know I made it. My place in hip-hop was validated when I started writing for the greats, your favorites like Kanye West." Then he proceeds to say, "I laugh at the fact that they're calling you the greatest. And you people talking about you run your city, it's gentrified. You having an identity crisis, how you identify, B.I.G. you minimize." Now, we know that Kanye was minimizing B.I.G., Big Sean, in his Drink Champs interview when he said that signing him was the worst decision he ever made. And Sean rebuttals that by basically saying, like, "I'm solidified. I know my spot in hip-hop is solidified because I hear a little bit of me in you, because I wrote for you, and I'm laughing at the fact that they're calling you the greatest." And when he says, "You're talking about you run your city, that's gentrified," that's very likely a reference to Kanye West, as he has a song called Run This Town with Jay-Z, and his city, Chicago, has been at risk of gentrification for many years now. Then he raps, "You're having an identity crisis, how do you identify?" And what I take from this is Sean is basically trying to give Kanye a reality check. Gentrification is when a poor neighborhood is taken over by wealthier people moving in and basically improving the economic state of the neighborhood, while simultaneously displacing the previous poor inhabitants of the neighborhood who were initially there. Sean uses this as a metaphor to describe Kanye's current mental state and positioning within the culture. Kanye doesn't just think that he runs his city, as in Chicago, he thinks he runs hip-hop. He thinks he controls culture, fashion, everything he has a hand in. He acts like he has this holier-than-thou ability to take things to the next level. The gentrification aspect of this bar is a metaphor to describe Kanye's current position in life. Everyone's always asking for the old Kanye. Kanye married Kim Kardashian, was married into a very wealthy family, became a billionaire, and that is when we lost that old Kanye. That is when he went in a downward spiral, losing his wife, losing his relationships with longtime collaborators like Big Sean, like Pusha T, like Jay-Z, losing his massive partnerships that made him a billionaire with Adidas and Gap, and losing himself, going from a hardcore Christian to publicly stating that he doesn't have the same faith in God that he once did. He went from almost naming his next album Love Everybody to doing a whole interview tour which was solely dedicated to publicly hating on Jews. So as someone who once had such a strong pulse on the culture, I believe what Sean is saying here is that Kanye's been metaphorically gentrified and is suffering an identity crisis. He let his economic status and political stance divide him from his family and friends and his own people, as he went from saying George Bush doesn't care about black people in 2006 to making White Lives Matter t-shirts and saying slavery was a choice just 10 years later. Sean then proceeds to rap, "I had to switch the home team because they committed treason. People looking for engagement like they got their knee bent. I got better things to do than find someone to beef with." Now, we brought up before that these bars, a lot of people thought that they were aimed at Kendrick just because of the fact that during his beef with Drake accused him of having issues with his engagement with his fiancée Whitney. And the bars that he's thirsty for engagement or that Sean has better things to do than find someone to beef with, that could be aimed at Kendrick because he was really actively looking for that beef with Drake. But the only other guy who was even more thirsty, no Diddy, for beef with Drake was Kanye West. Kanye has always been, throughout his entire career, antagonizing Drake. And that people looking for engagement like they got their knee bent bar, that has to be about Kanye because A, Kanye is always looking for attention. Kanye is probably the biggest attention seeker in hip-hop. When Kendrick went at Drake on the Like That verse, Kanye then proceeded to remix that song and start dissing Drake out of nowhere and tried multiple times to insert himself within this beef. The engagement bar could also be an ode to the fact that Kanye is a hopeless romantic. Throughout his entire career, Kanye has been quote-unquote looking for engagement, as Sean said. Kanye's been engaged 3 times in his life. First in 2006 to Alexis Pfeiffer, then again to Kim Kardashian when he obviously married her, and now to Bianca Sensory. He's always been obsessed with trying to find the right girl. So yeah, that people thirsty for engagement bar could definitely relate to Kanye for multiple reasons. One is that, while Drake calls himself certified lover boy, Kanye really is the original certified lover boy, as he always falls head over heels over the women that he's with. He brings them everywhere with him. They're like attached to his hip. Look at Amber Rose back in the day. Look at him and Kim Kardashian's relationship. Look how he begged her obsessively to get back together with him when she was with Pete Davidson. I mean, that was like borderline harassment, maybe not even borderline. And the way you don't see him anywhere these days without his current fiancée, Bianca. And then him thirsting for engagement is obviously him also seeking attention and, as Sean said, trying to find someone to beef with. Think about Ye jumping into the Kendrick and Drake beef randomly, or randomly dissing Big Sean during a Drink Champs interview for no reason. Plus, if this wasn't enough to convince you that he was dissing Kanye, I mean, he started that bar by saying, I had to switch the home team because they committed treason. His home team, the record label he was signed to his whole career, was Kanye's label, and he had to leave. Then he says, man, this industry is terrible, I can't even vouch. I've seen grown men get matching tattoos for the clout. This is another diss to Kanye, as he got matching tattoos with Lil Uzi Vert and Steve Lacy. He had some more bars for Kanye when he said, and I'm gonna need to cut my top off, it's decapitated. If you guys remember earlier in this story, Sean was complaining that he was owed money for the profits from his albums and singles that he released when he was signed to Kanye's label, and here he's asking for his cut off of those unpaid royalties. And this also works as a double entendre, as he cut off Kanye, his former boss and mentor. Then he says, what the F you pro at? Procrastinating? And this is another possible diss at Kanye, because Kanye always refers to himself as a genius or a god, and Sean is questioning his credibility or what he's a pro at by saying, what are you really a pro at? Procrastinating. And this could be in reference to the fact that Kanye is always procrastinating his album releases. There are like 15 different Kanye albums that he announced that he just never dropped. Think Yandhi, Good Ass Job, Vultures 2, TurboGrafx 16, and when he does release an album, it usually comes with like 4 delays. So yeah, Kanye is definitely a pro at procrastinating. Now again, these bars are too obvious to not be about Kanye, and obviously Kanye's fans felt the same way because they ended up leaking Big Sean's album immediately after he released this snippet and that freestyle. The fan who leaked it said Kanye told him to do it, which would really be disgusting if that's true. And Big Sean responded to this on an Instagram live where he was basically laughing it off, saying that there's no way Kanye would have told his fans to leak his album because Big Sean already sold too many albums and put too much money in Kanye's pockets for him to ever do that. But he said this with a very sarcastic tone. He was laughing the whole time. I mean, watch the clip. You'll see what I mean. It was obviously very sarcastic.
I've been there since graduation. I got to like study and contribute, give energy to every project. 808s, Beautiful, Twisted. So I know he wouldn't do that because that's trash. I know he wouldn't do nothing like that. So whoever did do that, just know it did f me up. But I know, hold on, let me show y'all something. I know he ain't do that. Talking about, yeah, he did that. I know he ain't do that because look at this right here. You see this plaque right here? It's 185 million records sold under good music. I love good music. They made more money off my music than I did.
He also just dropped another snippet where he said he might take a pee off of your Mount Rushmore before he scales it, basically saying that he belongs on that Mount Rushmore of hip-hop. And again, I think that's the saddest part about Sean's whole career is he goes from talking extremely confidently on tracks as though he's, top 5 in the game, and then quickly walks back any confidence or disrespect that he displays in his music by clearly stating that he doesn't want smoke with anybody. But it's like at some point you gotta pick a side or you gotta just let the music do the talking. I mean, to me, Big Sean is a great rapper. Can he go toe to toe with a Kendrick or even a Drake? I don't think so. And I think he knows that too. That's why he hasn't and has always walked back any sort of sneak diss that he sent Kendrick's way. But with Kanye, it's a bit different, right? I mean, he ghost wrote for Kanye. Kanye's not a battle rapper or a true MC. Kanye has a lot of writers do the writing for him. Sean knows that. Sean knows that Kanye is not a threat lyrically at him, and Sean probably harbors a lot of resentment towards Kanye for comments he made or profits that he held back from him after all the loyalty and work that Sean put in specifically to help Kanye. And instead of pulling a Jay-Z or a Lil Wayne where you kind of step back from the spotlight and give your proteges their time to shine and advice on how to grow and stay with them to make sure that they stay on the right path, Kanye did the opposite with Big Sean. Instead of mentoring him like Wayne did to Drake or Jay did to J. Cole, Kanye instead tried to constantly steal the spotlight, forcing Big Sean to put him on his albums a day before they were supposed to release, disrespecting him in interviews years later, and constantly bigging up Drake, someone who came up around the same time as Big Sean, while at the same time never giving Big Sean the mentorship or respect that he deserved. Now, if you ask me, guys like Big Sean, guys like Chance the Rapper, and Wale, those were the three biggest wastes of potential within the 2010s decade. And I say that kind of respectfully because I think those three guys had the most potential to be some of the biggest rappers in the game today. Definitely on the same level as a J. Cole or a Travis or Tyler, the Creator. But I think it's that lack of confidence or letting the hate get to you that stopped each of these guys from reaching their full potential. Chance was on top of the world. He ended up dropping his first album, The Big Day. People hated it, and we haven't heard an album from him since. Instead, we heard lengthy Twitter rants from him where he interpreted the hate that his album received as people wishing that he would die. Wale has also been a culprit of frequently venting on Twitter and beefing with guys like DJ Academics when Academics called out the low first week sales numbers for one of Wale's albums. For both these guys, Chance and Wale, instead of just swallowing that, taking that L, building back up your confidence within the music and coming back with something a lot better the next time around, because again, everyone loves an underdog. So if you come back with good music, the music will do the talking. Instead, they let the hate get to them, and we haven't heard any project from the two nearly as good or as successful as their previous work. And it's really the same thing with Big Sean, right? He let that rivalry between him and Kendrick that stemmed from Control overshadow a lot of what he had going on within his career. Instead of just kind of moving on and maybe taking some of Kendrick's advice and trying to get his rhymes up and drop a classic album, Big Sean resorted to sneak dissing. And when those disses maybe didn't hit the way that he hoped, or when Kendrick actually showed that he was down to kind of engage in this beef, Sean would walk back his comments, disappear from music, and come back with songs where he's talking about how he couldn't keep up with the bigger three. But now he's talking about peeing off the Mount Rushmore. So again, just sounds like he's confused. His confidence isn't all the way there. And he needs that confidence if he ever wants to produce a classic album, much to the likes of the output we've heard from his former rivals, Kendrick and Kanye. But who knows? I mean, albums take a long time to digest to truly establish if they're a classic and stand the test of time. So maybe this album that the Kanye fans leaked is Big Sean's first classic. But let me know what you guys think. I mean, does Big Sean have a classic project? Was I reaching with these bars? Is he not really dissing Kendrick or Kanye? I mean, again, I don't really think he's dissing Kendrick, but I definitely think he's dissing Kanye here. And what do you guys think? Would you want to see an all-out war against Big Sean and his former mentor, Kanye? Would that be entertaining in 2024? But speaking of entertainment, if you were entertained by this video, please drop a little subscription, a little comment, a little like. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this whole messed up situation. And let me know what you guys want to see next. And I will catch you in the next one.